If you could learn your way out of ignorance, even if it was painful, would you do it? One of the most famous ways to learn how to learn is from Plato's allegory of the cave. And in this video, you'll learn the 5 ways to escape Plato's cave with martial arts. But first, what is Plato's cave? It's a classic story from ancient Greece, which holds as much relevance today as it did nearly 2,500 years ago. In the Republic, he creates an allegory which teaches us how we're all created and programmed to be in the dark or in ignorance of our true knowledge. And it's not until we personally decide and take responsibility to set ourselves free from the shackles of a closed mind that we will be truly enlightened. He instructs us to take measured steps on our path towards a better way to live, which is through the art and study of philosophy. He paints the scene like this and says, "Let me show in a figure how far our nature is enlightened or unenlightened. Behold, human beings living in an underground den, which has a mouth open towards the light and reaching along all the den. Here they've been from their childhood, and have their legs and their necks chained, so that they cannot move, and can only see before them, being prevented by the chains from turning round their heads. Above and behind them, a fire is blazing at a distance." In the cave, he then says there are only shadows which can be seen of other vessels, statues, and figures of animals made of wood and stone and various materials. He knows that some of them are talking, but some are silent. But as the prisoners cannot move, they can only see the objects being moved by others in the form of shadows, as their light is given to them by the fire. So he asks us to look again and see what will naturally follow if the prisoners are released and disabused of their error. So do you think they will be happy? Or they'll be in a state of confusion, pain, anxiety, and so on? Plato says that when they look towards the light, he will suffer sharp pains, and the glare will distress him, and he'll be unable to see the realities of which in his former state he had seen the shadows, and then conceive someone saying to him that what he saw before was an illusion. So now you can see the sun represents knowledge and wisdom, and the cave, which is dark, leads to ignorance and old habits. And that when we are trying to change our lifestyle, for example, or improve our health, and ultimately to live a better life, the wisdom of the light can sometimes be too much to bear. Or at least at first, until we develop the mental and the physical muscle to deal with the challenge ahead. Or as Plato says, in the world of knowledge, the idea of good appears last of all, and is only seen with effort. So the reality is, to cure ourselves of our ignorance, it must be done so with effort, and that's lots of it. And for the person who has seen the light, but then tries to tell others of the true nature of reality, Plato says, "Men would say of him that up he went and down he came without his eyes, and that it was better for him to not even think of ascending. And if anyone tried to lose another and lead him up to the light, let them only catch the offender, and they would put him to death." So Plato goes even further to remind us how to treat ourselves when we are coming out of our ignorance, and others too, by explaining the bewilderments of the eyes are of 2 kinds and arise from 2 causes, either coming from out of the light or from going into the light, which is true of the mind's eye quite as much as of the bodily eye. And he who remembers this when he sees anyone whose vision is perplexed and weak will not be too ready to laugh. He will first ask whether that soul of man has come out of the brighter life, and is unable to see because unaccustomed to the dark, or having turned from darkness to the day, is dazzled by excess of light. So now let's take it back to martial arts. The first way is to embody the beginner's mind. You'll always start as a beginner, a white belt, or a blank slate. And with time, commitment, and discipline, you progress. You don't just experience physical transformation, but when taught right, you will also experience a shift in your mental and spiritual states too. And if you always maintain the beginner's mind, you always progress at just the right pace. Here's the second way, is to absorb what is useful and discard what is not. If you only follow the classical patterns or ways which increase ignorance, something will go wrong on your path. Bruce Lee puts it like this: if you follow the classical pattern, you're understanding the routine, the tradition, the shadow. You are not understanding yourself. He believed we can learn from the classical arts as they laid the foundations from which we can grow, but he also realized they are the shadows of reality. Reality is within us and not just in tradition. Bruce learned Wing Chun Kung Fu from Ip Man, but when he saw the big picture, or the sun as Plato put it, he studied various martial arts like boxing, fencing, savate and more. And the way Bruce put it is this: you must absorb what is useful, discard what is not, and add what is uniquely your own. And the third way here is to test your skills in reality. To live out this maxim, Bruce pressure tested his skills and reflected to understand himself as a martial artist, a philosopher, and ultimately a human being. Unfortunately, there are some martial arts schools and even styles as a whole which don't really have a basis in reality. Or in other words, if you never get the chance to test what you're learning and check that it actually works, then you'll be stuck in the classical styles and the orthodoxies that Bruce mentioned. The fourth way is to create a love of wisdom. The word philosophy simply means the love of wisdom. So, to create a love of wisdom in your life, you must think and act accordingly too. Sure, you'll want to read some books and get into that, but it's not just a boring academic endeavor. Martial arts and philosophy, when done right, is actually a way of life. It's even a way of being. And in the Republic, Plato talks of the good life not just requiring a certain kind or type of knowledge, but also the harmony between your reason, your spirit, and your appetite, which according to him are the three parts of the soul. And the fifth and final way is to learn how to think, not what to think. My own philosophy professor regularly told us and reminded us that we are here to learn how to think, not what to think. And that made me think, why aren't we taught this basic concept from the start of our education? Although martial arts opened the door for me to think clearly, to be present and be healthy in body, mind and spirit, it wasn't until I merged philosophy and martial arts together that the world around me became much clearer. And the simple lesson here is to acknowledge that it's okay to not know how things work or what step you should take next, but it's important to equip yourself with the right physical and mental tools to give yourself the best possible chance in life. And that starts with knowing how, not what to think. So the closer you can get to true knowledge, wisdom, and shedding those old habits you've been meaning to all this time, the closer you can get to the essence of philosophy and martial arts and what they are actually trying to teach you. So here's my question to you to wrap up. How will you escape Plato's cave? Or if you already have, what parts of your life are you ready to develop even more? Comment below and I'd love to know.